Ferguson, you can see that there are people out there putting graffiti on a wall. Our reporter Robert Townsend says that many people are still out in the streets of Ferguson. We're almost 20 minutes past the curfew that was supposed to go into effect for the city. At this point, there is damage to the Ferguson Police Department. We've seen the smashed windows. Police are saying that protesters were throwing fireworks at the officers, bricks at the building, also damaging the business, the restaurant that's next door. And you can see that these people who are putting graffiti on this building, you see the name Floyd on the building. Obviously, all of these protests have followed the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
You see that, Morgan?
We see that. We do. And what is this man saying? Can you make out what he's saying?
He's saying, no, 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 let me talk.
Let me talk. Let me talk. Let me talk.
It seems like he's trying to tell them to stop throwing things at them. I will say, I think he's been here for several minutes. I believe this is the same gentleman that was here when we drove by the first time.
You can just see all those water bottles, all the things that are just littering the parking lot there. The video we have from earlier shows people just looting the police department.
In here, you're going to see that. I'll try to shoot around this gentleman here briefly.
You can see the shattered glass at the doors of the police department, shattered windows. We do have video of just dozens of people storming the police department before police were out in their riot gear. Look at that. You can see just water bottles, different things littered in the parking lot. Yeah, that's the video we had from earlier, just showing what, this is not the peaceful protest we saw earlier today. These are people who are causing damage to the police department.
Good evening. 100,000 Americans lost, tens of millions of people out of work. We could have never envisioned a story that would make more headlines than COVID-19. But then we saw the horrifying video of George Floyd, the 46-year-old African-American, dying with a knee on his neck for 9 minutes. Our country is bending under the weight of two emergencies. Tonight, we're here not only to keep you informed, but hopefully to provide you with some context and perspective. It's an hour-long edition of 5 on Your Side at 10, and it starts now. For the second night in a row, turmoil in Ferguson. Tear gas and fireworks flying, flashing lights and smoke billowing through the air, an all too familiar scene as police try to push back crowds.
Now, the rowdy protesters were still chanting, still gathering, still raising their signs that read, "Justice for George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and no justice, no peace." But then some guys threw big fireworks at dozens of police officers who were in riot gear and standing in the parking lot of the Ferguson Police Department. And within moments, we saw police fire lots of tear gas at the protesters, hoping to finally disperse this crowd. But let me tell you, the protesters then took off, running down South Florissant Road, running across a nearby strip mall, and running to their cars. Now, a majority raced down the streets. Interestingly, I saw many of them still actually recording the chaos with their cell phones. We also saw some people laughing and running away from the tear gas.
Okay, we got glass breaking at the Ferguson Brewing, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is unfortunate because a lot of these businesses are owned locally. A lot of them are African-American owned businesses. And we had the trouble last night with some businesses being broken into, and you can see someone trying to vandalize that door. And we had some citizens in Ferguson trying to stop some of these protesters and the vandalism last night. It does not appear that we're seeing that right now.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I hear that. I think that was a flash grenade, a flash thing by police, most likely.
Tonight, both sides of a controversial confrontation in the Central West End are defending their actions. Good evening, I'm Ann Allred.
And I'm Mike Bush. People across the country are weighing in on the encounter, which had a couple pointing guns at protesters outside their home.
But did they commit a crime? Our Jenna Barnes is live tonight with what she learned. Jenna?
Yeah, and the couple says the protesters broke down this gate to get into the neighborhood, and you can see it is damaged, but the protesters say gate was open when they came through. I talked to a constitutional law professor who says the critical piece of this happened beyond the gate.
Do be threatened.
New video shows the tense moments Patricia McCloskey and her husband Mark pointed guns at protesters outside their Central West End home Sunday night. Protesters say they were on their way to Mayor Lyda Crewson's house to demand her resignation when the McCloskeys came out of their mansion armed.
We must protect the rights to peacefully protest, and any attempts to chill it through intimidation or use of force will not be tolerated.
Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner released a video statement Monday promising action.
And I will use every extent of Missouri law to hold individuals accountable.
But experts say Missouri law may actually support the McCloskeys.
A lot of people are not familiar with Missouri's castle doctrine, which we have extended to real properties.
SLU constitutional and criminal law professor Anders Walker says Missouri's castle doctrine is more robust than other states, meaning people can use deadly force to protect not only their home, but also their land. He says the private Portland place where the McCloskeys live counts.
I think that those streets are owned collectively, and it's essentially like walking onto private land.
And that means, in his view, the protesters who on a public street would be practicing their First Amendment rights were the ones breaking the law.
So there's actually, one, no right to protest, and then the protesters themselves are trespassing.
You may have seen some text on the screen during the new video of this encounter. We want to let you know that is commentary, and it is the photographers, not ours. Tonight, we've seen a couple of private security cars drive by the couple's home, but so far, all is quiet here. Live in the Central West End, Jenna Barnes, 5 on your side.
This isn't a movement. This is our lives, and we have to live it every single day.
It's going to be tough. It's a tough fight, but we just got to stick with it.
Walking in my neighborhood, can't count the amount of times police have just conveniently driven past me.
When you get stopped by a police officer, stick your hand out the window. I'm like, stick your hand out the window? What's going on? He said, these cops will shoot you.
And I said, why'd you pull me over? And it was a white guy, and he says, because I ran your license plate and nothing came back.
I don't think racism is in your DNA. Like, you weren't born to be racist.
My objective through life has always been I have to prove the narrative wrong.
And I'm really kind of sad and kind of embarrassed and feel awful that there is so much racism.
Welcome, I'm Art Holliday, alongside 5 on Your Side's Rennie Knott and Ahmad Hicks. This is Race. Listen, learn, live. If you're one of the people who melts down at the mention of Black Lives Matter or systemic racism, or athletes using their platforms for overdue change, this may not be the program for you. But if you're someone who's genuinely willing to listen, someone who's interested in being part of the solution, by all means stay tuned. We're glad you're with us.
To the pharmacists,
the grocers,
and the restaurant workers.
Thank you.
To the teachers, the volunteers,
and the people keeping us on the road.
Thank you.
To the doctors and nurses,
the firefighters, and the paramedics.
You're the ones risking it all to serve the greater good of our community.
Thank you for standing up for St. Louis. Good evening. As we start a new week, it's time once again to take a deep breath. Every night we've been focused on the facts, not fear. But some of the facts can be frightening. But there is also hope in what so many of you are doing to make a difference just by staying home. However long this takes, we're going to be here for you, keeping you informed. 5 is on your side, and together, we are St. Louis strong. It's Sunday, March 29, 2020. This is 5 on your side at 10. You'll need to keep your distance for another month. President Trump extends the federal guidelines until the end of April.
You know, it's a scary time for everybody, including our staff.
The St. Vincent Home helps area children. The changes the home is making to protect those kids from COVID-19. Coronavirus ruined their dream vacation, leaving them stranded for weeks.
We didn't know a whole lot about what was going on.
Now a St. Charles couple is back home, They share the journey it took to get there. And demand for hand sanitizer higher than ever. Now a family-owned business is switching over production to help in the fight against coronavirus. Thanks for joining us. Like many of you, we've been doing things a little differently around here in light of the coronavirus crisis. We are doing our best to practice social distancing, so Ann Allred and Scott Connell are both working out of their homes right now. Ann was one of the first anchors in the country to begin working remotely. Good evening, Ann.
Hi, Mike. Yes, we are on week 3 working at home, and it's been pretty good, I've got to say. I mean, there's been some challenges. It takes some getting used to, like so many people at home. But overall, I think it's been okay. And I think as just also a person doing this outside of my job, I think there's been a silver lining I kind of found this past weekend. I think we've been able to slow down a little bit. I think this morning, for example, we went to a park for almost 3 hours with our daughter and looked for rocks and looked at a creek, and we colored on a blanket. And we've never done that before. I mean, not for 3 hours, but there's no places to go. There's no people to see. And I think that that's kind of been a beautiful thing. And you're creating memories because you're really focusing on your family with no distraction.
We have some sad news to share with you now. For the first time, a person has died in the city of St. Louis after contracting the coronavirus. Now her family has a message for all of us. Our Savannah Louie is live downtown. And Savannah, what do we know about this young woman?
Well, Rennie, we know she was a young woman in her 30s with no underlying health conditions. But what makes this especially troubling is how quickly this all happened. We want to show you a photo now. This is Jasmine Dixon. Her family sent us this picture. She was just 31 years old, again, with no underlying health conditions. Her family tells us they don't know how she contracted the virus, but last week, Jasmine started to feel sick and thought she had the flu. Tuesday, she went to urgent care and was sent to the hospital. By Thursday, she was on a ventilator, and Sunday evening, she passed away. The family tells us their heads are spinning.
Just a few weeks ago, the coronavirus was a headline from China, and never in a million years did my family and I think that we would one day, experience our loved one, our Jazz, to be the first official victim in the city of St. Louis. We're just asking the community, the state, the country to put aside our petty differences and come together and support one another because this thing is real.
The family is also asking you to share this story as a warning for anyone who think that they might be immune or not able to get the virus. They're also asking for prayers at this time.
Experimental drugs being tested right here in St. Louis. Will they work, and could they team up to take on coronavirus? Use soap and scrub for at least 20 seconds. We asked the expert if washing our hands will really protect us from COVID-19. School's out and summertime awaits. With all this social distancing, you want to know if it's safe in the pool. And can furry friends that offer so much comfort carry the disease that's changing the way we live? They're all questions from viewers just like you. The answers next on 5 on Your Side. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Bush. Since the pandemic began, 5 on Your Side is focused on facts, not fear. We asked you to text us your coronavirus questions, and we partnered with Washington University to help answer those questions. Our expert for the next half hour, Dr. Jason Newland, an infectious disease specialist, and let's get right to viewer questions.
If the bottle you scored before hand sanitizer started flying off store shelves is about empty by now, turns out your medicine cabinet shelves might have everything you need to make a new batch.
It's quite easy to make and economical, and it works.
Dr. Tony Wallner from Webster University helped translate the World Health Organization's recipe and guidelines to something you can more easily do in your kitchen. The recipe calls for glycerin, 99% isopropyl alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, and distilled water. First, swap glycerin for aloe vera, the kind you have for sunburns. It helps make the sanitizer into a gel. And at home, you're more likely to have isopropyl alcohol in lower concentrations. You'll just need to tweak proportions for the 91% isopropyl, but it will work. However, this is important. 70% isopropyl alcohol isn't strong enough to be effective, so don't use it. If you don't have distilled water, just boil and cool some tap water.
And that is everything. Mix it up.
Then wait a few days to kill off any germs that snuck in during preparation.
After it's set for 72 hours, it's ready to use. And you can just take some, put a small amount in the palm of your hand, and then just wipe it over your hands for 20 seconds.
Yes, you need to hand sanitize for just as long as you wash your hands. Adding a few drops of essential oils is fine. It makes it smell better. Just don't mess with the main ingredients.
Really, the only thing is just making sure you have the proportions correct.
This is safe for kids to handle under adult supervision. Just make sure to label your new bottle. And remember that this mix pairs best with avoiding touching your face, social distancing, and washing your hands with soap and water whenever possible. Abby Larico, 5 on your side.
Behind this building, amid the trash, dirty needles, and discarded furniture,
you never know what you're going to see.
Urban explorer Gary Fiorino came across something that didn't fit.
Found names, social security numbers, addresses, lab reports, entire medical history of people and personal information.
He contacted the I-Team to investigate, and even we were surprised by what we saw.
There are at least 6 big boxes that we found here with medical files like this, containing someone's entire medical history, all just dumped on the side of the road.
Every kind of a medical and legal form you could imagine.
Business receipts in the boxes helped us link them to this DaVita dialysis location in Florissant. DaVita Dialysis is an international company with 2,700 centers in the U.S. alone. They serve more than 200,000 patients across the country. Christine Scott received dialysis there for nearly 14 years.
So there's a lot of personal information that's in those files that I feel like I am totally been violated, that I'm just open up to whoever.
Scott is one of 58 patients whose personal health history was dumped for anyone to see.
This is our lives. We put our lives in their hands.
They could have easily ended up in the wrong hands. And let me tell you something, identity theft is nothing to play with.
I've been a surveyor almost 20 years, and this is a rare occurrence.
We reported what we found to federal health officials and Missouri's Department of Health and Senior Services. State investigator Donya Lowry was assigned to the case.
How concerning is it that these were dumped on the side of the street?
Very concerning. Because, let's face it, everywhere you go in a medical facility now, you have to sign a consent that, for HIPAA.
The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act is a federal law requiring healthcare providers to keep your medical information confidential and secure. Violate HIPAA and the penalties could be steep. Fines range from $100 to $50,000 per violation. DaVita is legally responsible for the records, but it's still unclear how they ended up on the road.
It could be a disgruntled employee. It could be that they were on their way to storage and somehow got dumped on their way to storage.
The I-Team found the state can do very little when records are not protected.
We do not have monetary penalties related to their deficiencies. They're given a chance to present what's called a plan of correction.
There were people violated, and DaVita needs to answer to that.
We turned the files back over to DaVita, hoping they'd tell us how this happened. After refusing multiple requests for interviews, DaVita provided this statement, acknowledging that a small number of files appear to have been lost or stolen. It also says the company is investigating. It's not enough for patients like Scott, who are left wondering who's been privy to the most private details of their lives.
Somebody knows that those records didn't get where they're supposed to go.
Absolutely.
Somebody knows. And to me, DaVita is that somebody. And I think they need to be held accountable for that.
How those files ended up dumped on the road is still a mystery. After our questions, DaVita said it reached out to all the patients involved. At the Florissant location, they've also increased employee training and restricted access to their physical files. That appears to be enough for the state. They've closed their investigation and decided against any action. Now, the federal investigation is still ongoing. For the I-Team, PJ Randawa, 5 on your side.
I love St. Louis.
even though I had to give you my son.
We knew him. He knew us. And it's a huge loss for us.
When you meet policemen like that, and you know policemen like that, it's a really neat thing to see.
And they do a job that most of us could not do and would not do. So thank you.
Funeral procession for St. Louis Police Officer Tamaris Bohannon is about to be underway. It's actually started there. You can see Sky 5 is over the scene right now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Morgan Young. We begin our special coverage of this with just remembering who Officer Bohannon was. He was a devoted husband, father, son, and public servant. And just to remind you of the events that have unfolded here, Officer Bohannon lost his life 1 week ago today serving the city he loved. He was responding to a shooting call in Tower Grove South last Saturday when he and another officer were shot by a man barricaded in a house. The other officer survived. Officer Bohannon died from his wounds the next day. He was just 29 years old, and he leaves behind a wife and 2 sons and a daughter. Officer Bohannon graduated from the police academy in 2017. He had been with the St. Louis Police Department for 3.5 years. And the people that he served with says that he made everyone, especially children, really feel like they mattered.
Isolation and loneliness. That's what COVID-19 has done to our loved ones in nursing homes. But recently, some of them had a little company. As you'll learn in tonight's Making a Difference report, a local man helped take them on a musical journey down memory lane.
I'll give it a whirl, but I ain't for that girl catching me.
There is something about music that can make you both forget and remember.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain.
That's why E.J. Glazer has come to McKnight Place Extended Care in University City.
When you play a retirement home, it's a concert and people are listening. And so I really enjoy it.
Far from Folsom Prison, that's where I wanna stay.
Coronavirus has isolated residents in nursing homes and retirement communities. But today, Johnny Cash has come for a visit. And Frank Sinatra, too.
All of me, why not take all of me?
I play everything from Cole Porter to Willie Nelson to Johnny Cash to Duke Ellington.
Glazer has been part of the St. Louis music community for years with his trio Glaze and the Moon Kings.
So in my 20s, I played music for a living for about 3 years, but I never had the confidence, didn't think I was good enough to do it for a living, so I got a real job.
But after a long career in sales and marketing at Charter Cable, Glazer recently retired, and music no longer has to play second fiddle.
Here comes the sun, here comes the sun.
He came to McKnight Place with a playlist, but as we watched him go from window to window, he made it personal, playing their song.
Twisting the night away.
She was a dancer in her younger days, so she wants to hear dance music. So I played Twisting the Night Away for her.
Rock and roll.
And sometimes his solo act became a duet.
But I always thought that I'd see you again.
My daughter Nikki accompanied me today.
Nikki Glazer is one of this country's top comedians.
Did you pass down music to her?
I tried, Mike. I tell you, she, it didn't take.
For as rich as you are.
Coronavirus has hit our senior citizens harder than anyone else. But for one afternoon, they could escape.
Yeah, it's heartwarming, and I love doing it.
E.J. Glazer and his window-to-window concert. One man hitting just the right note.
If you are among the very young at heart, I think you are.
E.J. tells me that he's going to do it again this week, and he's bringing his trio with him. A reminder, if you know someone inspiring or making a difference in our community, let me know by email at mbush@ksdk.com.
A lot of work goes into making sure ballots are counted correctly and the outcome of the election reflects the vote. That work does not end once ballots are cast. Even when winners are declared on election night, they're popping champagne to celebrate unofficial results. Votes aren't certified or made official until well after Election Day. The process begins 2 weeks later in Missouri, 3 weeks later in Illinois. Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft says the certified results should be pretty close to the ones you hear on election night, but more accurate.
those results could possibly change because of fat fingers or clerical errors. We want to get you good unofficial results, but we also want to get them quickly because people want to see them. But then we want to go back, have multiple eyes look over them, and make sure it's correct.
Every ballot cast in Missouri has a hard copy, even the ones put through an electronic voting machine. Those are used in the election audit, which is how we can be sure the process for tallying votes worked.
They literally recount a portion of ballots to make sure that the machine count is correct.
Every election has its losers. After the results are certified, candidates or motivated parties can challenge them if the race is close enough. In Missouri, candidates who lost by less than 0.5% of votes cast might request a recount, or less than 1% of votes cast in a local race. In Illinois, a candidate who got at least 95% of the number of votes the winner got can call for a recount too. There are bound to be people who don't like the result of a vote. However, it is rare for a recount to change an outcome. Most people will just be ranting about it over Zoom Thanksgiving. With your No to Vote, I'm Abby Larico, 5 on your side.
The votes are in. They continue to be counted as we wait for the latest results on this election day, November 3rd, 2020. Good evening. I'm Mike Bush. Welcome to 5 on Your Side election coverage of Decision 2020.
And I'm Ann Allred. We are covering nearly 300 races right now for you tonight. We have live team coverage with crews spread out on both sides of the river for the latest reaction from the candidates and analysis on how people in Missouri and Illinois, how you voted. For about the last 15 years, Missouri's been trending red. It's been a red state, and that is holding tonight.
Our political editor, Casey Nolan, is here, and he has some new tools to help us understand how bi-state residents are voting in tonight's big races. Casey.
Well, let's just pick up with what we were just hearing there in the governor's race. You know, Nicole Galloway, as Ann said, Democrats threw at the governor who was not elected to that position. They threw at him, their only statewide elected official. She did well in St. Louis County. She did fantastic in St. Louis City. You can see she had about 80% of the vote there. You go to St. Louis County. So she's going to have to do really well there in order to offset the losses that she knew she would have statewide. And then you want to kind of keep the margins close in St. Charles County and Jefferson County. Well, St. Charles, they spoke volumes. They rejected the Galloway campaign. That's a huge margin there. Same for Jefferson County. And then you go statewide and you see there's only just a few little pockets of blue for Nicole Galloway. I talked to the head of the Republican Party tonight by text. She said that they see this as a rejection of extremist leftist values of the Democratic Party in Missouri. I think Nicole Galloway would say she tried to run a little more centrist of a campaign, but nevertheless, the rejection part you can't argue with. If we go to Missouri's presidential race, well, you're going to see something very similar there. The map changes, but the colors don't. St. Louis County going pretty strong, though, so far for Joe Biden, St. Louis City as well. But then again, backing out across the state, the AP has called Missouri for President Trump again. Just those little pockets of blue. It's not so much, Mike and Ann, that we necessarily have red and blue states, but we have states with blue cities and red urban areas, rural areas with blue cities. That's where the divide comes down to in Missouri, just like we're seeing it across the country tonight.
In the race for Missouri's 1st congressional district, Democrat Cori Bush, the registered nurse, the pastor, the activist, who pulled off the biggest upset of the primary, upending 10-term incumbent Lacey Clay. And this result never in doubt. Her Republican opponent, Anthony Rogers, is a comedian who hosts an online interview talk show, and you can see Cori Bush, with 82% of the vote, has been declared the winner in U.S. House District 1.
A landslide. Jasmine Payute is with the Bush campaign in North St. Louis County. Jasmine.
And a big night here. You can still feel the excitement. Things have slowed down a little bit at this election night watch party, but you can see Cori Bush a little bit behind me. Her supporters here celebrating this win. Cori Bush becoming the first black woman to represent Missouri in Congress. Now, Mike, as you mentioned, she ran against Republican Anthony Rogers and Libertarian Alex Furman. We've been talking about Cori Bush since what many called a surprising primary win against U.S. Representative Lacey Clay. Clay's family has held the seat for more than 50 years, but that changed this year. An activist, she first came into view following the death of Mike Brown. We asked her the first thing she would do after this historic win.
This is our moment, and this is our time, and that's how it will be. And so when you walk away from here, you walk with your chest poked out that change has come to this district, and it's come by way of first, we are going to love and respect and honor one another to change the face of this district and become who we know we can be, to have a safe, loving, welcoming, thriving community.
We talked to Corey earlier at the polls about a couple of things, but one of the things that we did discuss is that the possible unrest that would follow tonight's election. She said she will not stand for violence or intimidation, and she's asking for people to come together. Reporting live in St. Louis, Jasmine Payute, 5 on your side.
Just because the kids are stuck at home doesn't mean you can't keep the learning going. The 5 on Your Side Weather Academy is in session with free educational science classes. Learn all about weather, science, and safety. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon, we dig into a new topic. There's always something to learn, and you'll have fun doing it. The 5 on Your Side Weather Academy. No registration needed. Just join us at facebook.com/KSDK-TV.
Enduring dangerous heat in the middle of a pandemic.
It's really not the mask, it's you being outside, sweating.
Expert advice on staying cool and COVID-free. Humid, heavy air is a way of life in our region. How fields of corn are feeding the humidity. It's 6 words that can save your pet's life.
70 and over, don't take her over.
How to tell if the heat is just too much for your furry friend. Plus, it was a summer St. Louis had a lot to celebrate. A brand new arch and stadium until those 10 days in July.
I don't know if I can take it any much longer.
Surviving the summer of '66 when air conditioning was in short supply. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Scott Connell. How many times have you heard this? It's not the heat, it's the humidity. That may be true, but the heat is dangerous all on its own. For the next half hour, we're going to give you tips that may save your life and save you a little money. First, a dangerous heat wave is moving towards St. Louis, and doctors worry it could be made worse by the coronavirus pandemic. Our Abby Larico has what you need to know.
While a little dirt never hurts, this summer there are bigger concerns.
It does take me 5 to 6 hours to water all my trees and shrubs. Now I'm doing that with a mask.
They're required at Garden Heights Nursery.
Yeah, it is hot outside. We have to take breaks, especially if we just are able to sit down in the AC and breathe.
Yeah, in the United States, we can see over 600 deaths a year from heat-related illness. Now with COVID in the mix, we fear that it could go higher.
That's because even minor COVID symptoms can get dangerous when you're dehydrated or breathing heavily.
Your body can quickly get into trouble.
Clammy skin, a slow pulse, no longer sweating, those could be signs of heat-related illness. Go somewhere cool immediately and get medical help.
The mask typically won't cause you to become heat exhausted or go into a heat stroke. It's really not the mask, it's you being outside, sweating, not staying hydrated.
That's why despite the heat, doctors recommend masks when you come in close contact with others, even outside.
You may feel the heat more wearing the mask. You do get used to it. The mask is crucial for preventing spread.
CDC recommended cotton face coverings are breathable, but they can get kind of sweaty, and masks are less effective when they're damp. So a long day outside means packing a couple extra to change into. Also opt for light colored face masks as they attract less of the sun's light and heat.
When you're starting to feel overheated in your mask, you socially distance yourself and go take a break.
Always wash or sanitize your hands before removing your mask, and pay special attention that little ones and older adults stay hydrated. Tom Bowman at Garden Heights roots every day in a plan.
What we have to do is really schedule our time. That watering I speak of, I am trying to wrap it up here shortly, so I am not out here running around during the heat of the day.
To stay cool and COVID-free. Abby Larico, 5 on your side.
It's Friday, July 24th. This is 5 on your side at 10. Play ball. After a long wait, Cardinal baseball is back and fans are still showing up for their favorite team. 2 officers now facing charges for shooting a driver. The details surrounding that shooting have changed a lot since it happened.
I was in fear of my life.
What the officers did violated the law.
Can severe COVID symptoms depend on your blood type? That's what some studies say. So our Verify team looks into it.
The bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
St. Louis's own Kennedy Holmes delivering the national anthem at the Cardinals' home opener tonight against the Pirates. The team standing during the national anthem, but showing their full support for Black Lives Matter during practice by wearing T-shirts supporting the cause. Good evening. I'm Casey Nolan.
And I'm Morgan Young. Frank Cusimano, as always, is living the dream. He joins us live from downtown tonight with the highlights. Frank?
Morgan, Casey, thanks very much. Welcome to Busch Stadium. Now, you knew this was going to be a weird night when Willie McGee comes out to throw out the first pitch on opening day. Now, in a normal setting on opening day, it would be a thunderous ovation for this revered baseball figure. But it was eerily quiet. But somehow I think the always humble Willie McGee, he didn't care at all.
This is 5 on your side at 10. The loss of a legend.
You know, Lou was a class act both on and off the field.
Cardinals Hall of Famer Lou Brock dies. You'll hear from Ozzie and Whitey about the baseball hero that spanned generations and will be celebrated for years to come. The final goodbye to Officer Tamaris Bohannon.
I have so many friends who are police officers, and I just think about them and their families, so it gets me.
The funeral that brought out thousands of St. Louisans he swore to serve and protect. We begin with some sad news for St. Louis and Cardinals Nation. Baseball legend Lou Brock has died. Let's take a live look at his statue outside of Busch Stadium, where fans have already started to leave flowers and cards. For those who saw him play, they can still hear 50,000 fans yelling Lou. Good evening. Thank you for being with us. I'm Ann Allred. And I'm Morgan Young. We have team coverage tonight, starting with Mike Bush, who's looking back at a Hall of Fame career.
He was quite simply one of the greatest Cardinals players ever.
Breaking ball, hit off the pitcher, to the third baseman, no play, base hit, 3,000 for Lou Brock.
But Lou Brock may be best known as the centerpiece of one of the greatest trades in baseball history, coming to the Cardinals from the Cubs in June of 1964 for pitcher Ernie Broglio. Broglio never won more than 4 games for the Cubs. Brock became a first-ballot Hall of Famer, and he once told us he always pushed himself to be the best.
One of the things the game demands of you, and that is to bring your A game to the game every day. And sometime when you do, on a day you didn't think you had it, oh man, that was a smile. I got it today.
Brock was at his best on the biggest stage. In 3 World Series, his batting average was an astounding .391. And then, of course, there were the stolen bases.
Well, I think in a sense, our ball club decided to go to the stolen base. I was really instructed to steal bases.
He is still the National League's all-time stolen base leader, and his 118 steals in 1974 is also the league's single-season record. Brock went into the Hall of Fame in 1985 and was a Hall of Famer off the field. Year after year, you could find him helping out good causes, like our baseball camp for kids who are deaf.
There were people there to help me when I started out, and these kids are no different. We are there for them as well.
Lou Brock fought through a number of medical conditions over the last few years and passes away at the age of 81. But when we think of him, we will think of the joy he played with and the joy he brought to thousands upon thousands of Cardinals baseball fans.
And Frank Cusimano grew up watching Lou Brock on the field and had the honor to interview the legend. And Frank is joining us now. Frank, he was always so generous with his time, would always do a million interviews, always said yes. He was just very patient.
He really was, Ann. You know, when most people think of Lou Brock, they think of the 938 steals, they think of the 3,000 hits, or that incredible statistical performance he put on in the last two World Series where he hit 414 and 464. But when I think of Lou Brock, I think of the gentleness of the man and the kindness of the superstar. You know, Ann, he grew up in a time period where it was sometimes very difficult for African Americans in Major League Baseball. And many of his contemporary superstars, like Bob Gibson and like Frank Robinson, had hard outer shells, but not Lou Brock. He was the sweetest and the most gentle superstar I've ever been around. I can remember as an 8-year-old going to summer camp with his daughter Wanda. And one day I asked Wanda, could you bring home my glove and have your dad sign it? The next day, Wanda gave me the glove and it said, "To Frank, best wishes, Lou Brock." I've interviewed him like 50 or 60 times, and I've never seen the guy in a bad mood. I talked to Dick Zitzman, his agent, and his very close friend tonight, and he said even at the end last week, when it was looking bad for Lou, the first thing he would always ask Dick, hey, how's Bob Gibson doing? How is Bob dealing with his cancer? That's the type of person Lou Brock was. He will always be remembered fondly here in St. Louis. For more on his magnificent career, let's head out to Busch Stadium and check in with Ahmad Hicks. Ahmad, take it away.
Thanks, Frank. And how ironic is it that the day that Lou Brock passes away is the day that the Cardinals and Cubs are playing? For those who don't know, the Cardinals acquired Brock from the Cubs in 1964, but it doesn't go without mentioning that the Cardinals didn't accept Mr. Brock right away. That is until they saw him run and when they found out who he was outside of the diamond. As Cardinals Hall of Famer Whitey Herzog describes, he never saw Brock in a bad mood. He says he was kind to everyone, no matter the situation, and former teammate Ozzie Smith also had glowing reviews. Take a listen.
In pro ball, and you know, Lou was a class act both on and off the field. He was an easy guy to talk to and was always willing to share his knowledge and stuff of the game. And I think that Lou is what has made Cardinal baseball what it is today. I mean, the excitement that is created by, he was able to create excitement both with his legs and with his bat, you know. So he was one of the most exciting Cardinals and one of the nicest people you ever want to meet.
And coming up in sports, we'll hear from Whitey Herzog on the Cardinals legend and Hall of Famer Lou Brock. That'll do it for me live in downtown. I'm Ahmad Hicks. Let's send it back to the studio.
Ahmad, thank you. And a lot of you are responding to this news. You're taking to social media to do it. Mary Maggio Kelly says, stealing base after base, he slid in and then pumped up right safe. Also loved the Brock umbrella, but never owned one. We are seeing so many good memories that you guys are sharing. We have Ray Baird, a true ambassador of the sport, one of the greatest Cardinals to ever wear the birds on the bat. As everyone's so sad about this, there's always the good things that people are saying too. Christina Fry, first game with my dad, excited to see Lou Brock on the mound. And of course, we also have Chris Hess, who says, I never had the pleasure of meeting Lou, but I did get to see him play several times when I was a kid. Rest in peace in your field of dreams. Ann.
Morgan, thank you. The National Baseball Hall of Fame is remembering Lou Brock and sent its condolences to his family. Chairman Jane Forbes Clark says Lou and his wife Jackie returned to Cooperstown each summer after his induction in 1985. She says, quote, his smile would brighten induction weekend.
A final tribute.
It's just heartbreaking.
St. Louis comes out to pay its respects to a man who served and protected the community.
A hot day today. Looks like the Labor Day weekend's going to end on a fairly steamy note. We're tracking a bit of a cool down as we head towards the end of the week in just a few minutes.
And I'm Mike Bush, getting ready for a 5 on Your Side Labor Day weekend tradition, the MDA Telethon. Very different this year in a pandemic, no phones, but you can make online donations at ksdk.com/donate. You always come through for the kids, and I hope you'll join us again, the MDA Telethon, right after the newscast.
One person is dead after a triple shooting in North St. Louis. St. Louis police say officers were called to the 5800 block of Minerva just after 5 this evening. Investigators don't believe the other 2 victims' wounds are life-threatening. We are working to get details on what led to the shooting and if there are any suspects.
Hundreds of people lined the streets today honoring the life and career of St. Louis police officer Tamaris Bohannon. He was shot and killed in the line of duty last weekend.
The procession first passed the South City precinct where Officer Bohannon served for more than 3 years. Those who knew Officer Bohannon and those who never met him were there to pay their respects.
I feel sorry for his family and his kids. I have so many friends who are police officers, and I just think about them and their families, so it gets me.
Shame. Shame. When are you going to stop? When are you going to stop? You know, he was a good guy,
When the procession made its way to the Cathedral Basilica, there was a crowd waiting there. The Bohannon family did not want cameras inside the service as they said goodbye to the son, brother, father, and husband.
But they did set up speakers on the front steps. Sarah Maki spoke to some people who were out there today.
As Tamaris Bohannon's procession turns the corner, there's a crowd waiting for his arrival.
I made it my business to come over here today.
On their flags, a thin blue line, the same line running across the badges and across the hearts of the police gathered here Sunday afternoon. Philip Wilder lives in South City and saw the police cars rushing through his neighborhood the night Bohannon was shot.
And I said, what doesn't happen? Then when I turned on the TV, on the news, that's when they told me, you know, an officer got shot, 2 officers got shot.
He's here, like so many others, to honor a man he didn't even know.
He sacrificed his life.
We just stopped to give our respects, because it's important.
Bernice Wilkerson drove here and was happy to see so many others assembled.
Makes me very proud, very proud.
At a time with so much uncertainty, unrest, and unease, she says this is one place people can come together.
These are trying times, but you also have to be mindful and careful and give respect where it's due.
In St. Louis, Sarah Maki, 5 on your side.
There are several ways you can support Officer Bohannon's family. T-shirts are being sold in his honor. You can also donate to Backstoppers, which is helping his family. You can find links to donate at KSTK.com under the As Seen on TV section. Hopefully you are not laboring on Labor Day. It is the unofficial end to summer this weekend, and apparently it is going to feel like the end of summer.
Now, I do want to say this because I was asking Scott about this because I have to plan my first pumpkin spice latte. I have to plan it out, and he told me not quite. I was excited.
You know, we're pulling back. Mother Nature has kind of teased us and taunted us with this hint of cool weather, and it's going to snow out in Denver. Where it was nearly 100 degrees today, they're going to get snow on Tuesday. And because they're going to get stuck with that really chilly weather all week instead of just part of the week, they're keeping it to themselves. So while we will cool down a little bit, it's not going to be quite as cool as it was. Now, this is close to a pumpkin latte spice sunset. Yeah? Okay, Morgan, I'm just saying. That's from Wendy over in O'Fallon, Illinois. Pretty colors for sure tonight. Hopefully you were able to enjoy the sunset. It's been a warm night in St. Louis. We are still around 80 degrees in town. Outlying areas are still in the 70s. Some passing clouds from time to time. Have a little front up here. It's trying to kick off a few scattered showers and a couple of rumbles of thunder across Iowa. You can see it is pretty paltry in terms of thunderstorm action, but 92 was the high temperature today in St. Louis. And lo and behold, that's the 50th day we've been at or above 90 degrees so far this year. On average, 43 is where we are. Last year, we were at 50. Year before, we were 72. Now, we're talking a fairly quiet night. We have a few scattered clouds here and there. Most of the night's going to be pretty quiet. Now, to our north, some of that activity that's up in Iowa may try to drift a little farther south. The front's going to be nudging towards us. Now, this is not a cold front that just comes plowing through St. Louis. And so there's a lot of limitations here on how much we can get in terms of showers and thunderstorms. We're thinking the best chances will stay to our north tomorrow. If we can get something to develop north of St. Louis tomorrow afternoon with the heat of the afternoon, sure, there's a chance we could have a strong storm or two. But we have have to get it to develop before we could have a problem. So right now we're thinking most areas are staying dry tomorrow and pretty toasty. Here's that front just kind of stalling out across the region here as we head into Tuesday. Now, last week we were looking at this being to our south and we were on the cool side. Not so much so. We're still around 90 or better on Tuesday. At the same time, Denver, where they were in the upper 90s today, will be seeing snow on Tuesday. So, in perspective, this is a pretty decent forecast, wouldn't you say? Now, temperatures will still be close to that 90-degree mark the next couple of days, maybe into the low 90s even on Tuesday. By Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we are a little bit cooler. Our average high this time of year is 84 degrees, and it's going down. So we're going to see those average temperatures kind of dropping off here through the rest of the month. And yes, we do cool down, perhaps to or a little below average. Right now, Morgan, there's just not a big chance for us to see a lot of rain this week. Very limited chances for rainfall. I know a lot of folks already having to drag the sprinklers out, water the lawns, water the plants to keep them going for another month or so. It may have to keep doing that this week. It doesn't look like big options for rain right now.
Well, I do want to ask, because I did have this conversation with Casey Nolan, and Scott, are you excited for fall? Do you want us to have more summer? It was a strange summer, I know, but I'm ready.
Well, it's a strange summer on so many different levels. 2020 can just come and go as quickly as possible. Wouldn't you agree, Ann?
I totally agree. It has just been a wacky year. Although you know this about me, Scott, after years of working together, I am a summer gal. I get a little bit bummed out when summer starts giving up her fight. But I would think, Morgan, you're from Texas. You would like the heat like I do.
No. I am used to the heat. I am accustomed to the heat. It was never okay. I was never okay with it. No, I'm ready for fall.
And there you go.
Sports is next.
Well, it feels great out here, guys. When we come back in sports, we'll continue to remember the legend Lou Brock, and we also check in on the Cardinals as they took on the Baby Bears. Sports is next.
The 5 on Your Side Sports Desk is sponsored by St. Charles Nissan Hyundai.
What's going on, Missouri and Illinois? We begin things tonight honoring the late Lou Brock. As you can see, flowers already being placed outside of his statue outside of Busch Stadium as he passed away earlier this afternoon at the age of 81. But instead of being sad right now, we're going to think about the good times he left us with, because honestly, that's what he would have wanted. The Cardinals acquired the legend in 1964, and from there he left his mark in St. Louis, winning 2 World Series. He had more than 3,000 hits and more than 900 stolen bases, and has possibly one of the best World Series resumes. In 21 games, he batted .391, had 4 home runs, 13 runs batted in, and 14 stolen bases. Cards legend Whitey Herzog reflects on the Hall of Famer, Mr. Brock.
Well, actually, I wasn't lucky enough, Frank, that he got to play for me, but I would have loved to have him. Brock not only was a great base stealer, holding the Cardinal record, he was a good hitter. He had 3,000 hits. He was a tough out, and he was just really a good competitor. And I always said to Vince, I said when I saw him hit a golf ball, how good as far he could hit a golf ball. I wish you could have hit like Lou Brock.
Let's talk some Cardinals baseball. After sweeping the Cubs yesterday, they took on the Baby Bears this afternoon, wrapping up their 5-game series. Well, that will wrap up tomorrow afternoon. One interesting note, on ESPN primetime games last year, the Cardinals were 0-4. They were trying to break that streak of bad luck. Before the game, they were honoring Lou Brock, and well, they played with heavy hearts, and they honored him today by scoring a lot of runs. First inning, Tommy Edman at the dish when he takes John Lester deep. That would start the scoring. The Cubs would tack on a few, but Goldie told Dakota Hudson he would score some runs tonight. He did his part in the 3rd inning. The 3-run bomb, that would give the Redbirds the lead. And then in that same inning, Rangel Ravello, a double. That would score Tyler O'Neill. And the Cardinals, they will go on to win by a final of 7-3. They'll wrap up their series in Chicago tomorrow afternoon at 3:30. And that will do it for us in sports. I'm Ahmad Hicks. Let's send it back to the studio.
All right, Ahmad, thanks. Coming up, even a pandemic cannot stop a St. Louis Labor Day tradition. The big changes made to Greek Fest and how you can take part.
Well, taking a look at today's high, 92 degrees, the low this morning, 71. Now, that's quite a bit above the average this time of year, which is 84 and 65, but we were nowhere near that record high of 102 degrees. We missed that by a good 10 degrees. I'm sure the people in California, where in some cases in the LA area, it was above 120 degrees today. So and that's not a heat index, that's the actual air temperature. Plus they've got the fires going on. You know, all things in perspective, we're doing just fine. Temperatures away from town are down into the 70s right now. Coolest spots down over the eastern Ozarks and across eastern portions of Illinois, but no one is especially feeling pleasant this evening as we have this humid air across the area. Morgan saying, And we have dew point temperatures that are in the 60s, close to 70 degrees. Tomorrow, we are close to that 90-degree mark. The odds of us seeing rain around St. Louis are pretty slim, but north of I-70, both Missouri and Illinois, there could be a storm or two that pops up. And if one can get going with the heat and humidity, there is the potential that there could be a strong storm or two. But that's making a big assumption that the storms actually get going. Tuesday ought to be the hottest day besides today out of the last bunch and out of the next bunch. By the end of the week, we're closer to 80. But Morgan, no big, huge cool down on the way here later this week like we were looking forward to.
Okay, I'll keep those fingers crossed for later. Thanks so much, Scott. Well, 5 on Your Side has partnered with Education Plus to spread facts, not fear, when it comes to your child's schooling during the pandemic. One viewer asked, can elementary students be safe wearing a mask in PE while playing dodgeball inside? The experts say students will minimize risks if they wear a mask and sanitize their hands before and after PE class. It is also recommended that all equipment is sanitized between each PE class. For a full list of back-to-school questions and answers, you can text the word SCHOOL to 314-444-5125.
They are still yelling "Opa" to St. Louis Labor Day weekend tradition. The 103rd annual St. Nicholas Greek Festival sure looks a little different this year. Because of the pandemic, all of that lamb and baklava is being served for curbside pickup only. You can place your order online. Greek Fest wraps up tomorrow from 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. at the St. Nicholas Family Life Center in West County. And another Labor Day tradition's coming up next right here on 5 on Your Side, the MDA Telethon. Please join us.
Have a great night, guys.